Our youth are rapidly outpacing us in computer use and knowledge of networking and social connectivity through the rapid leapfrogging of technology. They use social networking sites to keep track of each other and comment on their work. They are self-motivated, self-producing, and self-promoting in ways that we have not even thought of yet. Many live their lives with one foot in the real world and both hands tied to a keyboard or game controller, the keys to the virtual world. These students have taken learning out of the schools and into the bedrooms, living rooms, and garages of parents and friends. Their context is collaborative group work, teens banded together to create new media and learning about anything from conspiracy theory and films regarding 9/11 to creating new music using tools that were previously only available to music producers. My talk examines teen collaborative learning in music production, how teens from the urban centers have risen above their education to build their own production team and production company to promote themselves, their music, and their products, and how they bring their street savvy, their knowledge of the hustle, and translate that savvy and hustle into music. While collaborative learning is nothing new, it takes on a new meaning with our global connectivity, as students can learn together anywhere and at any time. Knowing that this is an effective teaching tool changes the dynamics of the schools where collaborative learning is used for, with, and by the children, their parents, and teachers, as we move learning from the classrooms to the virtual global learning arena. Picture a semi-finished insulated garage in a multicultural urban part of St. Paul, Minnesota. On a worn-out couch picked up from a curb in the hood, 7 boys hover around a small screen of a refurbished MacBook. Attached to the laptop are an electronic keyboard, a video gaming microphone, and a set of bass booming speakers, the second one they got since they blew out the first pair. The boys range in age from 14 to 18 years. The largest proportion of them is attending an alternative learning center school after having failed to receive adequate academic attention in more mainstream programs. What is interesting about these boys is that most of them have chosen by themselves to seek an alternative to society's mainstream education. The system would claim that these boys have failed, while each one of the teens would articulately argue that the system has failed them. They know how clever, smart, or intelligent they are, but also understand that what they know and can do is not measurable in the fourth paradigm of education, that of the industrial complex. Some of these students have not only failed to find support in the educational system, but have families who cannot provide support in areas that the students see as valuable and increasingly valid. These boys are collaborative learners and workers. They congregate in packs. U.S. society fails miserably to provide any alternative means for these blooming adults to be productive, and as a result, society finds them threatening. Most of them are children of the urban poor who receive what Anion calls a third or fourth-rate education. It would be easy to see these boys as hopeless or lost causes, but they have not given up on themselves or each other, their knowledge accumulation, and their own production capacity. These boys are part of the populations of color in the United States who are at high risk for gang membership, arrest, and high school failure, which afflicts a higher percentage of minority teen boys than any other teens. Instead, these young men have found a creative and academically rewarding outlet for themselves. These are media-savvy students. They've had access to computers, even lousy ones in schools, have been raised on television, movies, cell phones, and the internet. By the time these students began attending school around 1994, the web was then a growing, if new, force for the West. The boys' talk is coded. They sing to each other, spar linguistically with each other in complex ways that reference not merely their present cultural context, but are historically, socially, and economically linked. They are up on the vote, the current world issues, HIV/AIDS, famine, and the crash of the financial markets. They understand and can articulate what it may mean for them in the future. They seek out the information on the internet, mostly on places like YouTube or Google Video, but they are experts at using search engines like Google. They blog and update their web pages daily, have in-depth discussions on current issues and what they are currently listening to or working on. But where does this bring us in their story? Well, this summer they formed a corporation, a music production company. One of the young men investigated how to develop a limited liability corporation. He promptly became the company manager and talent manager. Another young man had access to a music studio and volunteered to be the group's producer. 2 or 3 others became the central artists and performers. These are the ones who, in the aforementioned sparring, were considered the best at it. Then there are the artists who design the album art and the critics of the ongoing work. They hold regular meetings on work ethic and production of music in various parents' homes and garages. They spur each other on, fight like siblings, and make music that is more sophisticated and socially aware than much of the popular music on the radio. Technology enters into this scenario through the MacBook sitting on the table, through the iPods that are somehow communal property. Notebooks and sheets of paper litter the table. This is not a classroom or learning center, but they are using both their formal and social education. Sounds are experimented with. When asked about music sources, answers ranged from Ludacris, who contributed the title to this paper, to Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake. Underneath this, beats were tested, but unlike earlier garage bands, all of the music is generated by Apple's Garage Band program. With it, suddenly these urban youth can produce original music. GarageBand, the program, is quite complex, but still produces excellent and realistic sound that comes extremely close to studio-produced sound. The boys spent hours in the evenings after school experimenting with sound and how the program worked. They used their own computer savvy, but most of the learning was done through experiential learning on the computer itself. They produced loop after loop, humming along with the sounds. The boys who were expected to write the lyrics and rap them would bob their heads and spit out freestyle raps, unwritten off-the-cuff poetry, reinforcing each other with outspoken yas and uhs or spontaneous choruses. Suddenly, students who were failing in school were carrying around a laptop, notebooks, and even dictionaries. They were making word lists and learning vocabulary at a high rate. For the first time, learning something required in school without coercion and with true purpose. In urban educational settings, as Kinchlow argues, one of the key pieces in bringing students up out of poverty and through the educational system is the direct application of the student's world to their learning context. These boys are prime examples of this, but because of the deficit in schooling in many urban schools, they have taken the learning into their own hands and out of the classroom. They are not only studio workers using GarageBand, they are searching out programs to convert the tracks into playable audio tracks that they then upload to their MySpace and Facebook pages. They are adept problem solvers using the knowledge of how to get something for very little and translating it into the computer world. They are prime examples of Matt Mason's urban hip-hop pirates. They are in this way publishing themselves as many other erstwhile silent youth who are living their lives out loud on the internet do. They are shameless self-promoters, taking stage names even before they begin rapping. They advertise on their pages about each new song they are interested in sharing, and with the multitude of friends on networks like MySpace, they have free distribution of the music they produce. Not only do they manage free advertising, but they also receive instant feedback from the consumers of their music and can adjust their production accordingly. These students are the lucky ones. They have a MacBook and a place to use it. Most urban students can only access these kinds of opportunities at school or in public libraries where time is limited to 30 minutes or an hour, which is not nearly enough time to complete any in-depth or extensive learning or develop any lasting e-skills that can propel them into the emerging communities and economic markets that will eventually lift them out of the poverty that they experience in their lives. This group of young men is by no means unique. Groups like this have popped up all over the U.S. They communicate with each other in real time and asynchronously. This is a new movement of urban artists that are putting a new face on education, taking their collaborative learning styles out of our failing schools. They are living out what authors such as Enion, Kinchlow, Dyson, Ladson Billings, and other advocates for restructuring urban learning are talking about. They apply their lives in a virtual context and claim knowledge formation for themselves. As educators, it behooves us to learn from these examples and bring this learning back into the schools by valuing the savvy these students exhibit and by building collaborative learning coalitions not only locally in our schools, but also across the U.S. and the world. Thank you very much.